We are told that the purpose of life is not happiness, but rather meaning and fulfillment. But to be honest with you, I don't even know what that means. What does meaning mean? Where can I find meaning? What does purpose mean? Where can I find purpose? How do I create purpose? When I do things that involve risk, when I do things that I find significant, that have some sort of importance to me or have some sort of effect on other people, I deem that as meaning, I deem that as fulfillment, and I don't know why. Does it make me feel a certain way? Does it fulfill my life in certain ways that I don't know how to put into words? And is meaning subjective, or is it something that we deem as a whole? Can someone look at someone else's life and go, that's a meaningful life? And why can someone else do that if meaning is subjective, if how we find meaning is unique to each person? It almost seems like meaning comes from the significance of our whys, our reasonings. Why do we want to seek such a thing? Why do we have those desires? But then how do we decide if that desire is shallow? How do we decide that what we want isn't actually that important and isn't something that we find meaningful, but simply something that our past kind of traumatized us into wanting? And that kind of sounds like it will be meaningful as well. If a reasoning for our desires comes from some sort of deep-rooted trauma within us, and it is our story to go and seek that out and find out why later. We look at films and TV shows and we rest assured that they have a definitive ending. They have a satisfying ending. Everything makes sense at the end of the movie because we expect that to happen, and that will likely happen because that's how generally films are structured. We look at books, we look at mediums of art, and we take reference from that to find meaning in our own lives. And in novels and narratives, everything becomes okay in the end. And even if it doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, since we are witnessing these characters live their lives from a third person's perspective, we don't really care what happens to them. Sure, we might feel like, wow, we might be taken aback. It might feel absolutely enchanting to experience such a wonderful story. But in the end, the significance and the risk and the consequences of those characters' decisions do not matter to us at all, but we relate it to our own lives and we find meaning through that. And what does meaning even encompass? How do we know that something means something? And how do we seek meaning and fulfillment in our lives? Where does our strong desire for self-discovery and self-development come from? How do you determine if a human is better than the other? How do you know that you are better than your past self? What would it even mean to be that way? In another video, I defined growth as memories, evidence that our past mattered, and evidence that our past was real. Because we would never be able to know whether growth is good or not. We don't always learn from our mistakes, and we don't always get better. A significant event could have changed our decision making for the worst, because we could be more traumatized, more afraid of making the decisions that we once made, and that could hinder us in a negative way. And in that way, does that mean that the event didn't help us grow? If we look in the dictionary, meaning means significance, importance, worthwhile. We take risks, we chase hobbies, we chase relationships, we go to events, we go out hoping something would change, hoping we will find that spark in meaning and have a full-on realization, but it never happens. I wonder where the meaning comes from, and for a long time, I always thought that meaning kinda comes from the things I don't have. For example, in my life, I've never been in a relationship where we found each other through our stories and we genuinely love each other and we're very attached to one another. I've only fooled around with several women, and I have this idea that the meaning I lack is in that form of love that I've yet to find. But honestly, I'm completely unsure. I came up with this analogy earlier that could maybe give us a little bit of an idea of what meaning means. If life was segregated into different levels based on how many lives you lived. So for example, if you died in this life, you go to the next stage and then you live with people who are on their second life. Like, imagine that. And then it keeps going on and on. The people in their third lives live with people on their third lives. You know, people are kind of sorted by the amount of times they've lived. What we all know is that the scarcity of time and the fear of death and the uncertainty that there will be a second level will make the first life the most meaningful. Now, I don't even need to define what meaning is, but that analogy just makes so much sense. It seems so clear, even though I cannot define what makes it so clear. But maybe meaning comes from the scarcity of time, and that gives us significance in our choices and our decision making. Maybe meaning comes from the fear of death and what we're going to do before we die. The philosopher Nietzsche encourages us to live a life that is worth living over and over again for eternity. Amor fati, to love our fate, no matter what happens within it. And I think that is an absolutely beautiful way to live. That is a very good guideline to abide by. At the same time, I also find it quite autistic how much my mind wants to reason with what meaning is, how desperate I am to find meaning, how desperate I am to even define what finding meaning entails. I'm thoroughly confused, and I'm only 20 years old. I don't have to find the answers yet. And even finding the answers, I don't know how that would change anything. The values that many of us develop are heavily influenced by what society tells us. Heavily influenced by herd mentality. What is okay, what is acceptable, what isn't, shamed by other people. And society has this kind of power over us, this system that controls us, where they take love away and give love proportionately to how much you fit in, how useful you are to the general consensus. Most of our values aren't defined by ourselves, but what we grew to learn was acceptable. And coming to realize this, I just get pissed off because now my values are so aimless. I'm so afraid that the moral code I follow, the things I deem important, are just things that are fake, that are just pushed onto me by the people around me. They're just things I find other people accept rather than what I think is good and useful and smart. So I question all my values, and without a moral compass, nothing means anything. Everything doesn't make sense, and I don't know what to do. I don't know where to base my decisions off of. And if I don't find the values I truly stick by, that I truly think are right and good, I will be living aimlessly. And that isn't good. I'll be living in a constant state of confusion. But how do I begin to find these values? How do I even determine if something is right? On what basis do I deem something as good? What we find to be right and wrong is so heavily influenced by trauma and how we've grown up in our environment and how people have spoken to us, to the point where I'm beginning to also think that it is completely okay to let society kind of determine some of your value. Because at the end of the day, humans are social animals, right? We go in packs, we go in herds. And clearly there is some use to this codependency, this need to shame one another, this need to form ideas on what is good and bad in order to kind of move our species onward. And I think we are not above that. We are not above being human. In order to find out who I am, I'm taking this completely from Jordan Peterson. He goes, the first step to knowing yourself, to finding yourself, is to understand that you don't. How we can find our own values and how we can determine what is truly right and wrong for us and what is truly good is to ask ourselves these questions, which of course I stole directly from Jordan Peterson. When you do something, does that make you feel stronger or weaker? Is doing that thing filling you with shame? Is doing that thing helping you with your confidence? Are you deceiving yourself and other people? Are you adopting this personality that is designed to impress and to amuse, and it comes across as nothing but self-centered narcissism? What are your dark fantasies? What are your aggressive fantasies? Do a little digging and you'll find that you have weird-ass fantasies. What is it that you're willing to do to achieve a certain outcome? What are you interested in whereby you spontaneously pursue it? What do you procrastinate about and why? What are you unwilling to do? What do you think is good? What do you congratulate yourself for accomplishing and why? What do you berate yourself for failing to confront and implement? And these questions aren't easy to answer. I'm going to sit with these questions for a while and see what I can find. I think for a long time I've neglected thinking and neglected genuinely sitting down and writing and reading books that I'm genuinely interested in, because much more of my time has been taken and I've been given more responsibilities, and because of that I have less time to think. But maybe we don't even have to think, and these responsibilities and these things we chase would fulfill our lives in meaningful ways. Maybe we don't have to write the meaning of our lives for it not to be all in vain. But my brain is noisy as hell, so I'm gonna go write. Alright, maybe I'll find some answers. I find that the things I did that fulfilled my life in certain ways after it has been accomplished are things with story, with risk, with adventure. I think there is nothing more adventurous than telling the truth, even though there are so many ways to play power plays and power games. This past 2 years I've been so obsessed with climbing the social hierarchy, becoming a better version of myself materially, becoming more attractive, having a better physique. I want to kind of slap my material value into the face of the world so that it will give me more opportunities. But in my experience, the things that have brought me the most satisfaction, the most contentment, the most things I can look back on and feel genuinely proud of myself are acts of self-investment, of throwing myself into a journey, taking a risk, putting down my phone and going out to face my fears, confronting life, trying to change something even if the risk is huge, trying to change something even if it means I get hurt, trying to make something better, trying to seek for something that I believe would help me or improve my life. Acts of things that were uncomfortable, things that were dangerous, things that had a story, had a reason, and felt significant to me at that time. And perhaps that's where all the meaning lies. I still don't know how to live. I have no idea what's right, I have no idea what's wrong. I'm in a perpetual state of confusion right now, but maybe that's okay. Uncertainty is beautiful. We don't need a definitive start and end. We don't need our lives to be some sort of structured story. I don't know if we ever actually grow up or just change. I think right now I'm just gonna have goals and chase them and find out what happens later. And while I'm doing that, I'm just gonna try my best to understand myself. I'm gonna write a lot and think a lot, because something tells me that's what I should do, so I'm gonna do it. Not a very satisfying ending to this video, but maybe that's okay. I love you. Good luck. To better work.